Good afternoon. We will start the Finance Committee for July 23, 2024. Can we get the roll call?
Yes, we'll start with Committee Member Harmon, Vice Chair Friedman,
Here.
Chair Gutierrez.
Here. And we will move on to our first agenda item.
Well, general public comment we'll take.
Is there any general public comment? I don't see anybody.
Chair Gutierrez, no hands are raised.
Okay. Come on.
Thank you very much, Chair Gutierrez, members of the Finance Committee. My name is Keith DiMartini, and I'm the Finance Director for the city. And it is my pleasure to kick off this presentation this afternoon to talk about an economic development program in collaboration with the South Coast Chamber of Commerce. And so we'll start with the agenda for today's item. First, we'll all review the request to the Finance Committee that's in the Finance Committee agenda report in your packet today. I will provide a very brief overview of the program that we are wanting to embark on with the South Coast Chamber. I will also present the proposed schedule of meetings that we would like to come back to the Finance Committee to provide status updates on work that is being done in the proposal over this first year period of time. And then I'll kick it over to staff at the Chamber of Commerce. Then they will give a detailed presentation about the proposal before you today. And then we'll end with questions, public comment, and discussion. And so first, the request of Finance Committee is shown on this slide here. It's in your agenda report. It's first to receive a report from staff of the Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber of Commerce regarding the proposed economic development program. Recommend that the council authorize the city administrator to execute an agreement with the Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber of Commerce for an amount not to exceed $250,000. And finally, recommend that the council adopt by a reading of title only a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 24-066, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2025 to appropriate $150,000 of available general fund reserves, $50,000 of available airport operating fund reserves, and $50,000 of available waterfront operating reserves. So first, let me kick it off with a program overview. And you can see on this slide that there are a number of areas, number of components in the proposal before you today. And first, let me say that city staff believes that focusing on economic development is incredibly important. But we also believe that it's not solely the responsibility of the city or city staff to initiate and make progress on a variety of economic development initiatives. It really requires a partnership. And so we intend to partner with the Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber of Commerce and the business community broadly across the city to focus on these areas over the next year, which were outlined in the proposal before you. And that includes hospitality, events and visitor services, focusing on the waterfront and the blue economy, initiatives at the Santa Barbara Airport for their economic planning work, really focusing on State Street and a leasing strategy and economic vitality for properties on State Street. Also collaborating with UC Santa Barbara and technology transfer, supporting housing and downtown initiatives, supporting our business districts, and then also a very robust communication campaign. And what you will see throughout the proposal before you are a series of deliverables. We worked very closely with the chamber staff to have very clear, measurable deliverables as part of this proposal. And then one other outcome that I really hope comes out of this is a set of key economic metrics that we agree to track on an ongoing longitudinal basis so that we can really see our progress with achieving some economic development initiatives. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Kristen Miller, the Chief Executive Officer at the Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber of Commerce. She's joining us on Zoom today, who will present the Chamber's proposal.
Thank you so much, Keith, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kristen Miller, President and CEO of the Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber of Commerce, and really just delighted to be here talking to you about really this historic moment of bringing business and government together for an exciting new economic development proposal. I wish I was there in person. This is my most important, exciting thing, and I want to be there to talk to you about it. But just a few minutes ago, I did test positive for COVID, so it's good that I'm not there. I'm sure I hope you'll be able to feel from me and from the staff in the room our enthusiasm for doing this type of work. We have spent time in the last year carefully discerning the most important economic development programs that can help the city improve the local economy and jobs. We're delighted to be here today with a plan to get us started, set up systems, begin the research, and provide deliverables that will shape a more robust economic development plan that we can all work on together in a public-private partnership going forward next year and into the future. I think you are very familiar with us. I don't know if I can see the slides, but we have a slide that just talks about who we are. And I wanted to just highlight that for this proposal in particular, it's important to note our 30-plus professional CEO board members representing each important industry sector on the South Coast, plus our professional staff of 10, our large membership base, and our position as experts in the field of economic development. The Chamber does work on a number of big issues. These are chosen because they have an effect on the business community, and therefore we put significant energy into them. And they include increasing access to childcare, improving the reliability of our local electricity grid, providing employer-sponsored workforce housing program, and addressing downtown vitality in each of the 3 cities we represent. At its core, the Chamber is always working on economic development. The barriers to economic vitality have been well researched by us and really have not changed in the last 20 years. Access to a qualified workforce, housing for that workforce, and a conflicting regulatory environment. These remain the top priorities of our emerging Santa Barbara Economic Development Partnership, a division of the Chamber focused solely on economic development in a separate 501c3. 2 projects currently under this umbrella involve workforce development already. This proposal for the city of Santa Barbara today addresses the top 3 challenges and barriers we see in the city. We see a great need for a positive communications campaign. We're dedicated to providing data-driven research that can inform modern policy decisions, and a focused leasing strategy to address vacancies in the downtown core. We have 6 programs that we are proposing to accomplish those top 3 goals. I think now we're on the slide to go into the key programs. So here they are. I'll just touch on those. This, which is support for 8 distinct business districts, a downtown leasing strategy, a positive communications campaign, focus on the waterfront and blue economy, the Santa Barbara Airport economic impact, and employer-sponsored housing. I think then I will take a couple of minutes to go through each of these proposed programs, starting with support for the business districts. There's much focus on the downtown, as it should be, because this is the economic heart that flows throughout the whole body of the city. But our proposal really is to address each of the distinct business communities all throughout the city, because they are just as important. We chose this list of 8 based on some existing data that came from the city of Santa Barbara. But one of the first things we feel like we should do in this contract is to define these a little more clearly. We need to add a west side San Andreas area. We may want to separate, I think we had waterfront and funk zone separate. We may want to put those 2 together, but all that can be done in collaboration with your committee as we talk through these items and really dial that in. The next thing that we would be providing on in the business district area is convening businesses to hear from them. We do a bit of this through the chamber in general, but we have not, but the new part would be focusing on their business neighborhood and what are the particular barriers to business growth in those distinct areas. We can convene these people, do like a SWOT analysis, pull this information back, and then be able to start designing programs that really support those distinct areas. through that work, we would identify, it often happens naturally. Some businesses will rise to the top as key stakeholders or spokespeople who will be willing then to work more closely with the Finance Committee and with the Chamber on areas for their distinct neighborhoods. Touching on the downtown leasing strategy, this is where we understand that there are lots of efforts focused on improving lots of different areas of the downtown and the and State Street. Our focus will be solely on economic development programs focusing on leasing vacant spaces. So storefronts, but also second floor and full buildings, so that we have a strategy that covers all 5 areas that we have identified as important economic sectors to the downtown core. And that being diversified food and beverage, services and personal care, experiential and hospitality, innovative retail and vertically integrated entrepreneurs. What that really means is retail stores that you can walk into, but they may not have space to carry the full shelf of everything a person want to buy. It means they have an online process as well. And then office and trade. The idea behind having this diversity is that it brings the most people into the downtown core and has the most positive economic impact. And part of the work we can do in the first year is to even put some percentages on how much should be food and beverage, how much should be personal care, how much should be experiential hospitality, et cetera. So that, as Keith said, as we move forward, we'll be able to tell, is it getting better? The next deliverable in this downtown leasing strategy that we're focused on is really convening a group of a leasing subcommittee that can meet regularly to address prominent vacancies and have a representative from the city, the chamber, commercial real estate, property owners. In the old days, they used to call this a red team, and you would put a group together to really focus on 1 or 2 areas that you want to highlight for leasing, address that to which of the zones or strategies that you want to focus on, and then work with all of those groups to see what kind of incentives can be put together to bring in just the right business in just the right place. I do have on the deliverables there using modern software to track and analyze foot traffic, so that we have really for the first time very specific data on how this is working in the downtown core. I think the next piece of the deliverables in this category is working with UC Santa Barbara. So much of our region is identified with this world-class Center for Innovation and a research facility that brings the best and the brightest to our community and is growing entrepreneurs in businesses that are truly changing the world. I think our opportunity is to connect that to the downtown experience as well. Even though the campus is where it is, we would like to work on identifying potential leasing spaces where those businesses can grow in the downtown. So again, you have a mix, but also having a retail presence, so that you can buy a Gaucho sweatshirt or something that says UC Santa Barbara in our retail sector. We're uniquely positioned to broker this, we feel, because of the Chamber's close relationship with UC Santa Barbara in every level, but particularly with business development. Their departments that are also connected to corporate businesses are connected to us. So we'd like to bring that to you at the city. What's next? We skipped over the data dashboard slide a little bit because I went to talk about UC Santa Barbara, but I just want to point out that we started our monthly and now quarterly South Coast data dashboard a couple of years ago, I believe, and it's just been extremely popular. We defined what categories we were going to track in that dashboard and where we would get those numbers from other professional organizations and can put them together. Our proposal is to do a similar process for the city of Santa Barbara. So for instance, monthly or periodically, however we decide we want to do this, we should really be able to, we should define together what metrics you want to see. Our recommendations are going to be pretty straightforward. Sales tax, property tax, TOT income, and then number of vacancies, number of businesses open, number of businesses closed. And then let's decide together what sources we're going to use to track this data so that it stays the same over time. And we can periodically check in again and see, instead of just the anecdotal response that people have of business is good or business is bad, let's have some real data to answer those questions for ourselves. There's so much to love in Santa Barbara. With the changing retail landscape that is sweeping across America, not just us, with coming out of COVID, although I guess occasionally it's still here, and with really so many communities struggling to adapt to the new world of how people shop, how they want to live, how they want to work, how they want to be connected to what they do, what their vocation is. This has created a lot of talk, and a lot of it is negative, especially here in Santa Barbara, where we have so much to be grateful for and so much that is good that we, sometimes we tend to focus on what's wrong, what's not working. And that's okay. You need to look at all of your problems and address them. But up to now, there has not been a counterbalance message to that says there is also so much to love here and so much that is going on that is positive. So we launched the So Much to Love in Santa Barbara campaign in May. It is really targeted for locals, to remind locals and give them a place to express their love for their community in a positive way. It doesn't deny that there are things that could be better, but there is so much to love. So we have a digital campaign that is out right now. Up to now, it's been unfunded, so this is all grassroots. And I must admit, we have had a fabulous support from about 6 or 7 other organizations that have formed a steering committee. They're all pumping out this message on their own dime. The next phase is we would like some video. We're working on some video commercials and social media that will also amplify this message. And then the third phase will be to have physical objects in each of the downtown areas where you can stand and take your picture in front of the words Santa Barbara. So our visitor center has reported to us that this is something lacking in our community. Once we launched the people love to take their picture in front of the Mission, in front of the Dolphin Fountain, in front of lots of things, but they don't say the words so that you can brag on social media that you were in Santa Barbara. So even after we launched the digital, we just did a very simple frame and put it outside the visitor center at 120 State Street. And there is a line every day of people taking their picture with that. So we know this is the right communications and marketing path to go on. So funding for this will help us take it to the next level. And then the other real piece I think we put in here for a deliverable is to help you integrate this into all of the Santa Barbara City communications so that you can use it as well. Okay, where am I? The waterfront. This is highly important, and we see this really as potentially one of our biggest opportunity areas to partner with commercial businesses on Stearns Wharf and in the harbor to increase the economic vitality of this extremely important sector of our local economy. it's also an important sector of our community. It's a part of our identity. It being a community in coastal California with the assets that we have here are so valuable on so many levels, and we're doing fine. But it's time to go take it to the next level and really coordinate the businesses on Stearns Wharf and at the harbor with businesses on the waterfront, and really also connect that with the funk zone. So there's a great consensus that the funk zone is doing pretty well. The waterfront is doing pretty well, but there hasn't been up to now a good enough connection of the identity and branding of these two, of how you flow from one to the other. So we're very anxious to start looking at some branding and messaging. This was not going to happen in the next year, but we're going to start the work to start to research what that branding and what that message is. We need to convene these businesses in a new way. They're already asking me to do this. They're saying, Kristen, can we get the chamber to put us together in a little district like what the Arts District has done on State Street? And then really amplify those businesses that are providing so much to visitors and locals on Stearns Wharf and in the harbor, but elevating that experience for them. The other piece to this is looking at the workforce and how that applies. This is a huge, workforce development is a huge part of what the chamber is working on for economic development in general. And again, across the nation, how we line up our people with the right jobs for the future is a challenge across the United States. And I'm so grateful that we have this new Blue Economy labor market study that we really need to dive into, and we want to connect that to the city, the businesses, the chamber, the Harbor Commission, to make the most of that and see what we can be doing to amplify that pipeline of workforce who can be the next generation of employees in this area. Let's see, did I touch enough on that? Did I do the deliverables? I think so. Oh, targeted meetings, research, closely, and work. Okay, I get it. Next is the airport, and this one is a little simpler because we have been working with them for so long. The economic impact here is good. Adding the new, we have worked closely, the chamber has worked closely with the city and the airport to, and Visit Santa Barbara to bring new air service to the area. We see the next step as continuing to define how much visitor services we want to do at the airport. Right now, we're doing pop-up displays so that there's a banner and a welcoming message for different groups that come into the airport. And we want to continue to analyze what the return on investment is for that and how much to invest in that. The next, again, true opportunity is the commercial development around the airport. That land use plan is really important, particularly between Goleta and Santa Barbara and the airport. And this triangle is something that, again, the chamber is very close and a trusted ally with each of these three groups. So we see ourselves in a unique position to help shape that conversation and that research that leads to the best possible development of the lands around the airport with a true economic development lens in mind, and not sort of borders and city lines and history and politics and things like that. And we're so ready to do that with the new airport director. We're lined up and ready to do this. We want to connect this to the city of Santa Barbara. I believe that lastly is housing, our favorite topic. We published the Road Home just over a year ago, which was our proposed plan for addressing the housing supply crisis on the South Coast and really almost in the county. You can't talk about economic development in any setting without talking about how housing impacts that. Lots of people have come to us and said, how do you do that? we know that these two things are connected, but we're not quite sure how to put them together. We feel like in the last year, we have made some real progress in creating programs that connect housing to economic development. In the road home, we identified 2 major housing sites, which are in the city of Santa Barbara, and that is Paseo Nuevo as well as La Cumbre Plaza. We have designed an employer-sponsored housing consortium program that is sort of up and running. We definitely have stakeholders in each of the 3 categories: developers, employers, and government, to help make this happen. To our knowledge, it's brand new, and we haven't found a model to copy, so we're making this up. But we have lots of good experts helping us, reassuring us that this is the right way to go, including your city. And then the third sort of piece of this will be housing in the downtown. So we so support and appreciate all of the discussions about, in addition to Paseo Nuevo, what kind of housing can be added on the State Street corridor and in the downtown. But again, we hear from businesses and builders on what their challenges have been up to now. And so we'd like to bring that information into this work so that we can start taking down those barriers that haven't happened naturally up to now, even though everybody's heart's in the right place. So we want to spend the next few months diving into what those exact barriers are. Okay, the cat is sitting on my proposal. All right. As you can see, we're excited about this. We originally saw this, started talking to the city about this in about a $500,000 a year scope. But recognizing this year, the city's budget situation, and the fact that this is new and we're getting to know each other and how we're going to work together, we're proposing what we're calling this a starter contract for $250,000 to get this going. I hesitate to say it's a year because really by next March, we should be talking about a full year program for your next 2-year budget cycle in March or April, whatever you start that. But we're very confident that this set of deliverables for this amount of money is a great start to get us on to set up processes, programs, collect data. I don't want to overpromise how much we can move the needle on economic development in 8 months or whatever this is going to be, but we can definitely set ourselves up for a more robust contract going into next year and the following year with a public-private partnership. And I forgot to set my timer, so I hope that was good.
Ms. Miller, thank you so much for that. I'll wrap us up here and just close us with a proposed schedule coming to Finance Committee over the next couple of months. We're here today, and then we're planning to come to the full City Council for approval of the agreement with the South Coast Chamber of Commerce next month on August 20th. And if Council agrees to proceed, we will begin work. And then we've already tentatively scheduled a couple of Finance Committees over the next 6 to 9 months in November, and then again in February, and then finally in June for kind of the final update, and then bringing a full update to the City Council at the conclusion of the first year program. So that concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Before questions, we will take public comment. First questions. Do we have any questions? Councilmember Harmon?
Thank you, Chair Gutierrez. I guess I just want to start by saying I do support moving this forward, but I have what I think are going to be heard as some difficult questions, so I needed to say that first before I launch into them. He doesn't want me to do this? Sorry, 1 second. So first, and thank you, Ms. Miller, for this presentation. I really appreciate it. One of the things that I had understood about this arrangement is that there would be very, very specific and concrete deliverables that will help us determine what success looks like for this arrangement. And it may be the presentation format and the time limits and all that, but I didn't hear a lot of concrete deliverables. It was more like research this, convene this, excuse him, which are super important, but I'm trying to understand, like, what are the concrete deliverables? Is it like, yes, we researched it, or is it we're going to produce a report? I mean, those words to me are sort of inherently amorphous, kind of the opposite of a concrete deliverable. And so I'm still struggling to understand how 8 months from now we are going to say like this would, and I by the way, believe it will be a huge success. I just want to make sure we don't set you up for failure. And I feel like a little bit that might be what we're doing. And so I want to just make sure that we are all on the same page about what a concrete deliverable looks like. So I will, maybe that's to Mr. DiMartini, maybe it's to Ms. Miller. I don't know who wants to respond to that.
I'd like Ms. Miller to go first, please.
Oh, you're muted, sorry.
Thank you for your question, and we feel the same way. We're cautious about wanting to make sure we do deliver exactly what we're saying. I think that providing data back to this committee on a, I don't have, we talked about a, I know you talked about a schedule, but providing that in writing to this group and on a periodic basis is a huge deliverable. Being able to sit down and look monthly or every other month, however we decide to do this, at the list of data points that we have talked about, like sales tax by city, even data points like how many meetings did we have with how many businesses on the waterfront or on the mesa. Those are concrete deliverables that we can prove are happening. What we discern when I say it's just research and is whether we can promise that those numbers go up or go down or stay the same. I don't think we could say today, but we can definitely deliver looking at them and at least arming ourselves for the first time with that and deciding what data we're going to care about. I think that's a concrete deliverable. The other concrete deliverable is the So Much to Love in Santa Barbara campaign. That is, and that we can also track how many positive mentions we get in the media or on social media. We can also track how many locals come downtown. We can take a month and say, okay, here's how many people that we believe are local that were at a certain event. And then the next month, see if it's higher or lower to track whether the campaign is working.
Thank you. Do you have any?
If I may, I'll just add a few things. Part of this initiative is to work very closely with the Finance Committee members to review draft information that we prepare over the next couple of months, leading to the first meeting with the Finance Committee in November, and getting your feedback on some of the draft metrics that we want to track going forward. And so I personally am very much interested in tracking really key specific economic indicators that we can, again, track over time to really inform if some of these strategies are working or are not, and then adjust accordingly. And so information around tax revenues that we might be collecting, vacancy rates, like really clear economic indicators. And then other ways of tracking information so that we can really make sure that we're achieving deliverables are sort of maybe concluding reports, like really documenting the work that the chamber is doing in the community and the businesses on State Street, on Milpas, on these really specific economic areas, and tracking the communications that they're doing and then how businesses are responding. So there's a variety of ways.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And by way of background, we have been in a position where proposals related to economic development have come to us sort of sua sponte and have not, in my view, provided the amount of benefit that the associated cost would justify. So that's part of my concern, but really appreciate that. And that gets to my second question. It seems like, and I hear what you're saying, like the role is maybe more of aggregator of information than creator, I guess, but it seems like there are some functions of this arrangement that are duplicative. For example, you provide us with reports about TOT and sales tax quarterly. So I'm not sure, like, what's the value add to those pieces of data being presented to me by someone else when I get it from you already? Is it that it's in an easier to digest format? Is it that it's coupled with other data? Sorry, I know this sounds harsh. I just want to make sure that we get this right so that we can be celebrating in 8 months.
Councilmember Harmon, I really appreciate those questions, and I'll kick it off and turn over to Ms. Miller. You're absolutely correct. We do provide you a sales tax and TOT data on a monthly or quarterly basis, and we project out going forward. The benefit of reporting those tax revenues under this framework is that we will be able to do it in a much more granular way around the 8 or 9 key business districts, which we currently do not report. And so that
awesome.
the work to do that does require a lot of work with city staff and with our sales tax auditors and consultants to be able to get that geographic data, and then pairing it up with the initiatives that the Chamber of Commerce will be working on to see, okay, if they work in a particular area, what effect might it have on revenue collection, other economic indicators that we determine are important to track. And so really kind of bringing it down to a level of actionable information, which we are currently not doing as well as we probably could.
Awesome. That's extremely helpful. Thank you. That, to me, is illustrative of a very specific and important value add. So I really appreciate that.
And may I add one thing to what Keith just said? He and I have talked about this a lot, and I agree with everything he just said. I just want to add that also, as that information is being gathered, since it's coming from the chamber, we have the business people in the room at the table looking at it as well. So what you get should have some analysis with it from the boots on the ground, from the people actually experiencing what those numbers mean. And I do think that's a piece right now that's missing. Okay. We get numbers, but we don't get to hear from the people behind those numbers.
Awesome, thank you. And just 2 more brief questions, if I may. I do, that's really helpful. I continue, there seem to be some duplicative elements here, and I'm guessing that everything sort of drills down in the way that you described, but I'm hoping we can just be mindful. Have we run this campaign, like we have a PIO, and so this public information campaign, we're not going to be paying him less to get this. So we believe, and I guess my question is to staff, and I'm asking the question, we believe that this is a necessary value add on top of the public information officer that we already have.
Yes, I mean,
Cool.
Councilmember Harmon, yeah.
Yes, that's all
And
I'm here. Yeah.
just to go back to the deliverable item, again, I just wanted to share also, one of the other pieces that I think is going to be incredibly valuable is the work to develop the SWOT analysis for each of the business districts, which is identifying strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats as kind of a baseline, and working with our business community, identifying key leaders. And I would anticipate that coming back to the committee as a report and sort of helping to develop a steering committee in each of the business districts that then we have those partnerships that we can continue to work on. So, and yes, I do think that the social media campaign is an additive. The PIO has a lot of other responsibilities as well as internal communications, working, with me on internal communications work. So there's a lot of other responsibilities on his plate as well.
Perfect. That's all I needed to hear on that. And then my final question is for you, Mr. DiMartini. I appreciate, this, again, this came to us, I think, on the initiative, the awesome initiative of our chamber, and they're clearly the experts, but I am just continually troubled by, first of all, expenditures that come outside of a delineated process. It has nothing to do with the chamber. I have always felt that it's like a fundamental unfairness in some ways. And we're using reserves off of a budget season where we had many, many conversations about our economic challenges. And I'm hoping, and I can already guess what the answer is going to be, but I'm hoping you can share with us why you and staff believe, despite those economic challenges, despite the fact that this came sort of in a process, not a process, in a very undefined, non-traditional way vis-a-vis how we do our normal contracting, that our staff still believe this is a good use of reserve fund monies.
Councilmember Harmon, again, I really appreciate that question. And I too am not happy that requests for appropriating funds come outside of the annual budget process. I also do not like that approach. This particular topic had started being discussed with the chamber many months ago. So it actually did start during the budget process, which was what we communicated to the chamber to try and work on something for council review and approval during the budget. It just didn't get to a finish line at that time, unfortunately, which sometimes proposals like this take a little bit more time. And so here we are today. We didn't want to wait another year, right? We wanted to kind of move this forward, bring it to you. And there is a benefit. I guess one of the benefits of bringing it sort of as an individual request is that it actually gets even more visibility. Coming to Finance Committee and bringing a single item allows the committee to discuss it and then really gets maybe a little bit more public input. So there is that benefit, although it's not part of the annual process, so it's sort of not paired up with all of the other requests that might be going to council. So I recognize that also. Staff also believes that with really concerted economic development partnership with the chamber and with our business community, that the hope is that it will encourage an additional economic activity that will generate far and above the investment that we put in today through additional sales tax, through additional transient occupancy tax, and many other potential revenues that not only benefit the city, our own revenues, but the revenues of the businesses in the city itself.
Any other questions? Councilmember Freedom?
Thank you, Chair. First, I hope you're feeling better and don't have a too bad of a case of COVID. I'm sorry you couldn't be here.
Started with that too. I'm sorry. Hope you feel better.
I speak for both of us on that one. So first, I really appreciate the bringing this forward, and I'll be supporting it today. But I had many of the same questions that my colleague, Councilmember Harmon, had. I've been struggling with these, as our city administrator can tell you. I've been peppering her with a lot of questions over the last week or so. I just have a couple of follow-up questions, and the first, it gets back into the issue of the reserves, and it came outside the process and the decision to, if we were to delay it to next year and put this into the budget cycle, being that there's two components here, there's the budget process next year. How would that impact the strategy that we're trying to implement overall?
I think I might ask Ms. Miller to start answering that question about the work plan that you've thought through, and I can talk through some of the city's staff work that could potentially start earlier. But I'll turn it over to Ms. Miller.
The economy is so uncertain right now, and our businesses are so adamant about implementing something quickly right away to try and make things better. You know, we've done things a certain way for decades in this community and with the city, and the urgency to do something now, even though it is, like, as you've said, a difficult budget year and outside of the normal process, is because the business community is sort of begging us for some help to get started now. And really, when we were first talking about this as a $500,000 contract, and then the budget numbers were coming out, it was the waterfront and the airport who both came to us and said, don't let this go another year. We're funds that have an effect on this, and we're willing to come in on it with you to make that point, to do something now.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that if the committee and the council chose to delay, to really not invest and fund this agreement for another year, we would work with the chamber and see what work staff could do, right? We wouldn't be able to pay the chamber for the work that they would do, but there's work that we could do internally, getting ready for maybe producing some of the baseline key metrics that we might propose, but that wouldn't be as collaborative as moving forward with the chamber immediately.
And our staff would have to put other projects on the side for that. And so this is the opportunity to get a more robust set of data metrics that it looks like, and for all intents and purposes, the city we would need anyways to get all these data, all this metric, the outreach from the community. We would be going forward with it anyways. It would just take longer to do that if we didn't go forward with what's being proposed today on just this $250,000 piece, not the 2-year ask for $500,000 a year. Okay. And then to that, this is not a commitment for the full 1.2 million. If we move forward with this portion today, we would have the ability with these regular quarterly check-ins with the finance part of next year's budget. We see where we're at, see what the data, see what the deliverables are, and then the overall project would be evaluated next year as part of the 2-year cycle of the budget. So we're not making a commitment today for the entirety of the full proposal.
Vice Chair Friedman, that is absolutely correct. And so we would evaluate how successful this program sort of goes as we make presentations to the Finance Committee. And if the Finance Committee gives some positive feedback and thinks that this is a good program to continue to potentially invest in going forward, staff would include in the city administrator's recommended budget for the next fiscal year the additional funding required to continue the program. And then it would be part of the normal annual budget process.
And so by doing that now, doing this data information gathering now, we get all these metrics that Councilmember Harmon was talking about, the deliverables. We get to evaluate that at the Finance Committee in depth more than we would at, say, the council on its own. And then based on that, we can see where the successes are, where the weaknesses are, and any other questions that come up, and that would make a more informed decision for the 2-year budget, which is a big budget because it's the 2 years. So that would give us more information on whether or not we want to make the full commitment in the spring next year. Okay, thank you. And then this is again from Mr. DiMartini. In the city over the last 2 years or so, we've embarked on the Vision 2030 strategy, the economics sustainability strategy through all the departments. And the 4 pillars are fiscal sustainability, thriving workforce, innovation, and organizational optimization, to really look at our economy because it is not going to function the way it traditionally has in the past, where we rely just on the three major taxes: property, sales tax, and transit occupancy tax. And so my question is, as part of that, there were 70 different potential revenue generators, or approximately 70, that staff analyzed, and some of those came up to the council. Is there an opportunity through this pilot program to work with the chamber to analyze those 70 and incorporate those into some of the questioning when we go out to the different businesses to look at some of those? Because some of those 70 might rank really low for the city overall, but there might be something in the waterfront where, specific to the waterfront, it could rise up, or the funk zone. So could we incorporate, work with the chamber so they understand what those 70 or approximately 70 were, and try to incorporate that into the data gathering?
Vice Chair Friedman, absolutely. We would be happy to work collaboratively with the chamber staff on reviewing the draft list of possible revenue generating measures that staff developed over the last 12 to 18 months to see if the business community has any input, has any feedback, any other potential ideas. I mean, one of the main goals of this initiative, I think under the Vision 2030 umbrella, is really, from the city's perspective, under revenue enhancements, we're not talking about increasing taxes with this proposal. What we're talking about is making sure that we're generating as much revenue potentially as we can from existing revenue sources, right? That benefits the city, but it really benefits the business community as well. And so I think from looking at it from both of those lenses, we can collaborate very effectively together.
And this could kind of lead into my last question. So this is an effort to really look at fiscal sustainability for the city, but also our local economy and our businesses outside of taxes. So to get us to a more stable and ongoing, thriving community without looking at the tax over time, because that's just not sustainable going down the line. So this is really looking at how we can partner with the business community on other revenue measures other than taxes.
Vice Chair Friedman, that's absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Both of my questions got answered. Thank you so much, Mr. DiMartini, and for the chamber for this great presentation. I really liked how you mentioned about key economic indicators and how we're going to be coming back to finance and really have a hands-on tracking the progress with the chamber. I will too be supporting this proposal, but we will move on to public comment with Michael Nelson.
Chair Gutierrez, Councilmember Friedman, Councilmember Harmon, it's a pleasure to be with you today. My name is Michael Nelson. I am a Harbor Commissioner, Chair of the Commercial Fisheries Subcommittee or work group, and I'm also a volunteer program officer for the Commercial Fishermen of Santa Barbara. I'm delighted with a focus on economic development, but I'm here today to remind you of a public-private partnership with economic development at its core that you guys approved back in August of 2020. You formed a partnership with the Commercial Fishermen of Santa Barbara with oversight by the Harbor Commission's work group to basically address infrastructure needs as well as to try to diversify the city's economy by promoting the seafood industry and its supply chain. 4 years later, I have a great announcement. That's led to a partnership with Santa Barbara City College and what is known as the Ocean Collective. And the Ocean Collective will do two things. It will address the infrastructure that the approval back in 2020 sought to achieve, land for our commercial fleet, and two, a program of ocean careers, essentially an academic industry partnership where you have a pipeline of folks that go from high school through the community college for a job in ocean industries. To bolster that, on September the 4th, Peter Rupert, of the Economic Development Forecast at UCSB, will provide a report on the blue economy and its significance in the county. So that is necessary to support the courses that SBCC will be providing. So don't forget us. When you launch this emphasis on economic development, don't forget the start that you made back in 2020, and we'd be happy to provide Kristen and the Chamber with the labor and market analysis that Peter Rupert will present on the 4th of September, and we appreciate the support that we've received from the Public Policy Committee of the Chamber as well. So I look forward to a great relationship whenever you fund or time this thing. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. And our second speaker, John Stedman.
Thank you very much, Chair Gutierrez and council members, Attorney Doimus, Mr. DiMartini. I am here as I'm a member of the Harbor Commission. I've served on city commissions for over 10 years. I'm also a graduate of the Stanford Graduate School of Business, so I know a little bit about data. That's my business and has been for 35 years. What's missing in this commentary is what's the data model that this is based on, that you're going to embark on this foundational effort. And to echo some of Councilman Harmon's questions, where are the metrics? This would be called, in the private world, a phase zero of a project. And any phase zero still has deliverables. Whether you execute those in a sprint process or you have clearly defined milestones and goals, you still have to have hard dates and milestones. I don't see any of that. I heard words like staff belief, and we might have some meetings and foundational effort. If we're going to allocate $250,000 public funds, 50,000 of them from the waterfront department, I think we need more than messaging. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments?
Chair Gutierrez, there are two members from the public online.
Our first online speaker is Marcy Winograd. Marcy, would you please speak? Go ahead, Marcy.
Urge you in the strongest possible terms to delay a vote on this today, not to commit $250,000 of our taxpayer reserves to a very vague plan. I didn't hear not one concrete business idea. The only concrete proposal here is to spend $250,000 on something vague and to commit ourselves. Let's face it, this really is a commitment down the road to $1.2 million when we're facing a $7 million deficit. I find I have done a lot of research on REACH. This proposal is written into it. It says that city will collaborate with REACH on an economic development plan. This is alarming to me because REACH, for all its window dressing, is about expansion of military contracting on the Central Coast, expansion of surveillance satellites out of Vandenberg Space Force Base that are depleting the ozone layer. It is about expansion of private jet travel for the 1%. It is about expansion of billionaire space travel. So billionaires like Bezos or Branson can take 4-minute rides for $50 million into space to increase our greenhouse gas emissions. Do not collaborate with REACH. Please do not commit money to this plan. It is so vague. I'm not an economist, far from it, but I do observe that we have the seeds of a strong economy here. We have an aging population that needs services. We have hospitals and healthcare. We have renewable energy. We have tourism. Let's invest in gardens, in fountains, in parks that will draw visitors to Santa Barbara. There's nothing concrete here. The only thing, again, concrete is that you're going to dip into our reserves for emergencies to spend $250,000 to outsource to a private group whose real agenda is the expansion of the military-industrial complex on the Central Coast. Please delay this, and certainly it calls for UCSB tech partnership. I don't see any students from UCSB at this meeting. They conducted a 54-day encampment against the collaboration of the university with military contractors. They passed a resolution calling for divestment of $32 billion of UC funds from the war industry. Graduate students have formed Researchers Against the War. They are signing dozens of people up, students in the College of Engineering, to say, no, we will never vote. We will never work, rather, for the military. We don't want to be part of developing semi-autonomous weapons, bombs, missiles. Really be clear on who you are collaborating with here, and do delay this vote. You need a lot more public input. Thank you.
Our second and last speaker is Dolores Howard. Dolores, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Thank you. I am also appalled by the lack of clarity, the lack of metrics and specific deliverables for $250,000. I ask you to please not include a budget any money for a UCSB tech partnership that expands aerospace, missiles, bombs, semi-autonomous weapons, surveillance satellites, private jet services, and billionaire space travel through a collaboration with REACH. An economic plan for aerospace and military expansion would lead to further militarization of our planet and ozone depletion due to a high increase in satellite launches. Bring in the public, make this a part of your regular budgeting process so the public can know that this is going on, and so that we don't commit to not only $250,000, but years beyond millions of dollars more. Thank you.
That's it for. Thank you for everyone that participated in public comment. Do we have any comments? Councilmember Harmon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My appreciation to the work that's obviously gone in, particularly, of course, from the chamber and our staff putting this together. I am going to be voting to move this forward to City Council today. I trust our staff when they are telling me that this is a good idea and will be good for our city. But I do share a fair number of the concerns that were articulated by our public speakers today around specifically the metrics and the data and how are we going to analyze success. And I do that not simply to be negative, but from a place of truly desiring that this is effective and successful, and that in 8 months we can be sitting here celebrating and moving on to the next iteration of the contract. You know, given the history, I articulated this before, but I think it's important to reiterate, given the history of where we've been with these kinds of contracts, I'm very skeptical, and I don't personally anticipate that in 8 months I will be in a position to continue to invest. I mean, just that's the history of how these have been. And so I want to make sure that we're setting ourselves up, and importantly, the chamber up, to come back here in 8 months and not be saying, you know, we really didn't know what we were supposed to be doing, because that's going to be bad for everyone. And so that's part of why I'm harping on this. I just think it's really important that we're very explicit about what that's going to look like, because if we don't have those metrics clearly articulated right now, in 8 months, there's going to be nothing for me or any of us to compare it against. And a feeling is not going to be enough for me to be able to invest upwards of $1 million given the economic situation that we find ourselves in. So I just want to be really clear about that. When this comes to council, I'm hoping that the presentation can maybe, I know time is of the essence, so we had to be very high level here. I'm hoping we can really drill down on specifically what we are going to, I think one of the speakers said, how many meetings? I appreciate that you can't know for sure, but maybe you can say a minimum of 4 meetings. Just a list of the very specific elements that, almost like a checklist to the extent that's possible, and it may not be, and again, I'm still moving it forward, but that's really what I'm gonna be looking for. I also just wanna say, and I can't say enough that it has nothing to do with the chamber, but I would have liked to have put out an RFP for something like this. I have every confidence that the chamber would have won that. They're the right partner to do this. But there are elements in here that are not a priority for me, for the chamber to be undertaking. I mean, just for example, I think we all know housing is a passion of mine. It's the thing that I'm most interested in here on council. I'm not sure that with this $250,000 to have a bullet point for the chamber to address the housing supply crisis, I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. I don't really want the chamber to be broadly addressing the housing supply crisis with this $250,000. I love what was described about the drill down of the TOT and sales tax numbers into these 8 districts, and what does this look like in a very minute level. That to me is so that is expertise that clearly we don't have, that we need, that you are uniquely situated to provide. An element of a plan that's addressed the housing supply crisis, it will not be successful in 8 months. And I don't want you spending your time doing it. So let's, deep six that. And so that's part of where I come in. Like, I kind of wish this process had been initiated from the other direction, because I think we could have gotten to a plan that is just so streamlined and so focused only on where your expertise is and where our expertise is lacking. I'm confident we can get there. I just want us to take a fine-tooth comb through this and really sort of say, okay, housing is super important, we know that, but maybe that's not where this money is best spent for the chamber to be broadly researching and analyzing the housing crisis. That's kind of my job. I think that's why tax dollars pay me to be here, to be broadly thinking about and researching the housing crisis. And to that point, I'm sure that a lot of the feedback we're going to get is about the regulatory environment. And I just have to say, I really hope that a deliverable that we receive back is not a general statement of please update ordinances or please revise or optimize the regulatory environment. I already know that we need to optimize our regulatory environment. I already know that we need to, generally speaking, update ordinances. And in our experience in the past, when we've had these kind of engagements, that's feedback we've gotten. Fix the regulatory environment. Like, okay, how? And specifically, which way? And are you going to help me to facilitate the kind of community support to make those fixes? Because sometimes those fixes are difficult and there's a lot of opposition to them, so it's a long process. So I want to be very forthright about my concerns. That said, I strongly believe the chamber is the right partner to do this work. I strongly believe that we need this work to be done. And I think if we drill down a little bit and take a very sort of critical look at this, we'll be able to be successful. And with all that sort of grumpy talk, I'm really excited about the possibilities. And I think you guys are the ones who can really move the ball forward. And I am very grateful for us having this conversation. Thank you.
Councilmember Friedman?
Thank you. I agree wholeheartedly with my colleague. And first, I also want to appreciate bringing this forward because economic development strategies outside of just taxes are critical for us going forward. And we need to be able to do that and work with our business and our business community. I do have trepidation about mid-year cycle and after the budget's been approved and using reserves, in particular general fund reserves, in light of the unknowns with the budget going into this coming year. And at the same time, in order for us to really look at a robust economic development strategy, we do need to get data in matrix and go out and talk directly with the different businesses and in the different areas of town. I do like that it does break them down because they are distinct areas with different challenges, different strengths, and different opportunities. And so I would also add, it was mentioned, but I do fully support adding San Andres on the west side as another district. I think that was overlooked, and it is very important to that neighborhood in particular on the west side. And then it was talked about possibly combining the waterfront and the funk zone, and I would recommend keeping those separate. You can collaborate with them, but they are very distinct in the types of businesses they have, and they need to be treated individually. And I think the fact that we had 2 harbor commissioners coming here, the commercial fisheries, that in and of itself is something unique to the harbor itself, although it does impact the funk zone directly in the waterfront. But I would recommend those separately. The last I would add is that, again, getting back to Councilmember Harmon's comments and the chair's earlier, is we need to tighten up the metrics. And just to clarify for the public comment, we are not approving this as a done deal today at the Finance Committee. We are just making a recommendation to the full council, so it will get a full council hearing. And when it comes to the full council, there needs to be more metrics that we can, that the full council can deliberate on to address the concerns that were heard here today. And in closing, I'll say that this is not a commitment to the full 1 million proposal as part of next year's budget. There's a whole budget cycle that we're going to have. There's a lot that's going to happen economically here locally. There's going to be national trends that are going to affect where our budget is going to be next year. And so this will be part of the overall budget deliberations, the request for the additional 1 million. But I can say, and it gets back to the previous reports about community development and investing in there and allowing quicker response times when tenant improvements come in, just the department in general. It will be a big sell to say if we have limited resources to invest $1 million, $500,000 a year in this versus our community development department when that's what we're hearing. So the case really needs to be made through this action, and if the council approves it, to get those data, get those metrics to really make the case that that's the proper investment to unleash the economic potential that we're missing versus investing in our community development department, which is what a lot of businesses are and have been advocating for. And we did that this past year. We added a couple of staffers to that department, specifically look at housing element implementation and others. And we have more that we need to do there. So there is a lot that is going to go into next year's budget. And the tighter the metrics are and the tighter the deliverables are, the better the case can be made. But by no means is today's vote supportive of the $1 million proposal next year. And I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Friedman. I agree with, I think my colleagues sum up with, I was also thinking, I agree with Councilmember Harmon about being at council with this proposal and really giving the public a very clear understanding of the metrics we're going to use, what areas are we going to give the chamber to focus on. And I believe that the chamber brought the housing element because they were already working with ideas on how to help the housing crisis we have here, and I think that's why the slide is there. But as a full council, I think we can give them more clear direction. I thank, again, our finance director to make that clear statement that there was already conversations with the chamber, that this didn't just come up from the blue. So I just want to bring that up again. And we really need to look into the future, and especially with our economic development. And I mean, we just proposed a tax to the public, and I think we owe it to the public to start seeing different means of economic progress in the city. And this is an area that we weren't strong in, and so this partnership, and I think is going to really just help move us forward. And again, to the public, there's going to be more conversation. It's going to come up to council. So thank you.
Oh, I think we need to make the motion, right?
Yes. Yeah. Who wants to make the motion?
I'll move the staff recommendation.
And vote.
A motion was made by Vice Chair Freeman and seconded by Committee Member Harmon. We'll take a roll call vote. We'll start with Committee Member Harmon.
Yes.
Vice Chair Freeman.
Yes.
Chair Gutierrez.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
And the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.